Shane Drowan, and David Hamilton. Now, that was literally, if you look at the third base depth chart for the Milwaukee Brewers with Ortiz at short and Terang at second, right? You look at those and you say, they gave up how many third basemen? Basically, their whole third base depth chart. If you went to Fangraphs, you look at the depth chart of the Milwaukee Brewers, the third basemen were blank. Obviously, David Hamilton is now in there. You could possibly add Jet Williams. We'll get to that. We'll get to who's going to play third base. But it's fascinating when an organization literally trades away a full position on the depth chart. So this is what Matt Arnold said about that infield depth that now includes David Hamilton, along with, of course, Jet Williams, who came over in the Freddie Peralta deal.
Look, I mean, you talk about a lot of the infield depth that we have here. It's, the on top of Jet Williams and Hamilton here, you also have Bryce Terang and Joey Ortiz in the mix. We really like the defense here for sure on our infield. But you also start looking at the future here with guys like Jesus Made and Cooper Pratt and Luke Adams and Luis Pena and Andrew Fisher. I mean, there's just a lot of these types of guys coming, we feel like, in our system that can absolutely handle the left side of the diamond, that have really high upsides. And so we feel like we have the ingredients now, to weather the loss of somebody like Caleb Durbin, who obviously meant a lot to our franchise. But we feel really good about the infield depth, both now and in the future as well.
I think the now and into the future is a very big part of this. When you look at what the Brewers have now, which is not, obviously they say they feel good about it, and I don't doubt it. And it looked like, reading some other things, that they truly do feel good about their infield depth. However, what it looks like right now is a David Hamilton who's probably, good as a utility guy, and Jet Williams, who has never played an inning in the major leagues. So that is compared to a Caleb Durbin, who was top 3 in NL Rookie of the Year voting a year ago, and who burst onto the scene and took a hold of that third base position. So overall, when you look at the infield depth of the Milwaukee Brewers, they, I think, personally, probably got worse at the outset when you look at the infield depth right now. However, one of the things that Matt Arnold continued to say throughout this entire press conference, and really he said it a couple of times, and what kind of rang true when I was thinking back about what he said today, when I was thinking back about, okay, what stuck out to me from this press conference, it was the fact that he brought up consolidating the infield depth for arms and for pitchers. Because we'll get into the pitchers later and how many options they have for that starting rotation, that bullpen, wherever they want to put guys, but it's a whole heck of a lot. And so when he talks about consolidating infield depth and where they stand now into the future, I got to think it's possible that some of these guys might be up here a little sooner than we had anticipated. I'm not saying opening day 2026 or, I'm not saying that necessarily, but I'm saying maybe a little sooner than we had anticipated, because they were comfortable, at least for the very, immediate future, taking away a significant part of that infield, knowing what they had coming up through the system. So when it comes to the infield, we know that guys have versatility, right? Jet Williams can play not only short, but he can play second. Bryce Terang could play short, tried a little last year. Shoulder got a little scratchy, as they said. He went back to second base. Joey Ortiz obviously played third base when he was first in Milwaukee Brewers, slid over to shortstop when Willie Adames left. They have versatility, but who could take that third base position, and how do the Brewers see that third base position? Here's Matt Arnold.
Yeah, always open to additions, I would say first, but at the same time, look, I think there are a lot of ingredients here that we've talked about, and I had a conversation with Murph this morning and for a while now, just kind of talking about some of the frameworks that we've talked about, and we're not really married to any one particular permutation of the infield here. I think there are a number of different ways we could sort this out. And look, I'm headed to Arizona on Tuesday. And so, once we get into camp, we'll be able to evaluate these guys, spend a little more time with them, talk to them about where they're comfortable. But yeah, feel good about the options that we have available at third, short, and second.
And okay, so I just saw, let's see, we got a comment here from Taco Titan who said, "Who starts third?" Yeah, that's the big question. And honestly, it sounds like Matt Arnold and the Brewers are going to have those discussions in Arizona. It looks like he leaves for Arizona tomorrow. Pitchers and catchers is a couple of days away from reporting, so baseball season is definitely upon us, and that makes this trade even more intriguing. As it kind of went down at the final wire before players want to know where they're going to be for spring training. Now, could another possible addition happen? He's always open to it. That very first part of that soundbite, right? He's open to additions. I got to think that the Brewers are at least going to take a look at what additions they could make in the infield, possibly at that third base spot. Because if I were to answer right now from Taco Titan, who's going to start at third base? It's probably David Hamilton. And I'm not saying that's horrible, but it's not what Caleb Durbin did last year. Caleb Durbin, of course, was a guy who had a 2.8 wins above replacement. That's pretty significant. And then you look at, okay, where are you going to get that from? Are you going to get it from a platoon of Hamilton and Williams? Maybe once Williams comes up, does Williams come up and do what Caleb Durbin last year? Come up in late April and take the world by storm and rock and roll? It's possible, but you're counting on some different things. You're counting on a David Hamilton who last year in 91 games hit 198, 6 homers, 19 RBIs. He's really speedy, though, 22 stolen bases. So that's something to keep in mind. And we'll get more into David Hamilton specifically. But I think I wanted to start this just by who's going to play third base, because that is the big question. When you trade away your starting third baseman, the natural question is, who is going to start at third base? So then I asked Matt Arnold, okay, Jet Williams is a guy who plays shortstop. He plays second base. He plays outfield. He's more of an up-the-middle guy. What about third base for Jet Williams, a position he really hasn't played?
Certainly value Jet a ton, as you guys know, and I think giving him some reps at third base in camp is probably something that you'll see. Obviously at shortstop as well, and second base and the outfield. I think one of the things that we talked about when we got him was just his level of versatility and his willingness to kind of do everything, and kind of, again, how he fits our brand of baseball, is something that's exciting. And so, yeah, he's open to playing wherever, and we want to give him a number of opportunities, but again, we want to put him in a position to succeed because he hasn't played third base, yet, but he certainly has the ingredients to do so. So we're going to give him some reps there along with other guys as well.
What stood out most to me at the end there was he has the ingredients to do so. I think he does too. Now, you have to factor in that he hasn't played, again, an inning of Major League Baseball yet. He is going to get a ton of time in spring training at a bunch of different positions. As Matt Arnold said there, shortstop, second base, outfield, now third base. Partly because Joey Ortiz is playing in the World Baseball Classic. Bryce Durang is playing in the World Baseball Classic. Those are significant chunks of time in spring training where they're going to need guys to play the infield. I wonder how much that also plays into the factor of their depth, right? More time for a possible, a guy like Cooper Pratt, Brock Wilken, to be able to play at that major league level, right? It's not Major League Baseball, the games in the regular season. We all know spring training is different. But that's going to be significant time, and probably more time for those types of guys who weren't going to necessarily get those opportunities if Joey Ortiz and Bryce Durang weren't playing in the World Baseball Classic. Now, do those starters, also, yeah, they don't need probably as much of a look, right, from the organization as a Cooper Pratt, a Brock Wilken, a Jet Williams, even a David Hamilton, who they're familiar with, who was in the Brewers organization originally. Yes, they don't need as much of a look, and they maybe wouldn't play as much. But I think overall, it's interesting that the World Baseball Classic is going on this year, and that they could see some more of that infield depth play because their starting shortstop and second baseman are going to be gone for so long. I mean, they're part of this whole World Baseball Classic is there's, exhibition, you're with your team, you're preparing, and then you play, and then it depends on how long you go, right? If you advance past pool stage and all that. But I think it's going to be fascinating to see who plays more at these different positions. So One more thing about this third base spot, and then we'll get into David Hamilton a little, his background, and then we'll get into the pitching side of this because, I mean, you kind of got to go like this when you're looking at the Brewers pitching. You just gotta you get excited. I think when you look at how can't you get excited about all the options the Brewers have on their pitching staff? But here's what Matt Arnold said about a guy who they experimented with at third base at one point in 2024. You remember this? How about a Sal Frelick? Could he get a look at third?
I mean, look, we're always open to experimenting, and Sal's the best, and he's always willing to just do whatever it takes. So I think it's something we'll discuss when we get to Arizona. But he's also a really good outfielder, Gold Glove winner out there. We like him in the outfield for sure, and we like the other infielders as well. But I love that about Sal, that he's willing to do whatever it takes to help the team. And so certainly something that we'll potentially discuss and explore. Like you said, we've done that in the past, but I would expect he starts as a Gold Glove outfielder for us going forward. But again, open to having those conversations with him when we get to Arizona.
I would expect that too. I would expect that he's in the outfield. I would expect that they try a lot of different things at third base before they try Sal Frelick. Now, could you see him taking some grounders on some days? Don't be surprised if you see video coming out of spring training in Arizona with Sal Frelick taking some infield. I would not be shocked at that. And maybe even he plays a little bit in a game there. But that guy's a really, really good outfielder. As Matt Arnold said, Gold Glove guy. He's shown how good he is, that arm, everything about him in that outfield you absolutely love. It's tough to take him out. I know you have some depth there. You obviously traded away from it in the Isaac Collins deal, but you got Yelich out there. Depending on if he's going to be there, DH. Obviously, you got Blake Perkins there as well, who's fantastic defensively. We'll see what he can do offensively. He's still in the mix. And obviously, Jackson Churio, kind of your top four guys there. Brandon Lockridge is another guy who you could factor into this trade deadline acquisition of last season in that Nestor Cortez deal. But I would be surprised if Sal Frelick plays third base, unless there's a freak injury or sometime during a game he has to play over there. Otherwise, I would be pretty surprised if that happens. But I do think with the way the roster is constructed right now, I think you have to at least have the discussion, just because you are limited in your depth over there.